On behalf of the members of the City Council, I'd like to welcome everyone who's in the audience here this afternoon, this evening, as well as those viewing from home. We do have our engineering consultants here to review a proposal for the remodeling of the current site of the new City Hall. And to that end, who's going to start the presentation? Mike?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you able to see this from here? Is it?
Yeah, we got copies.
We got your copies as well. I can look a little bit closer. I'll try and turn it as much as I can. Just by way of the floor plan, in terms of how this sits, South Park runs along in this orientation. The parking lots are all over on this side. The main Knights of Columbus building is really here, and what we're talking about is adding this addition off the back to accommodate the program, space program that you're looking for. So our challenge was, how do we take a City Hall and put it into a Knights of Columbus building so it doesn't look like a City Hall inside of a Knights of Columbus building? We wanted to do something that was sort of transformational, that allowed this to be something with civic pride, something that was long-lasting, something that had some monumentality to it, and sort of embrace the future. So as we looked at this, one of the things that sort of stuck to us, if you look at the Knights of Columbus building now, there's this, as you drive along South Park, there's this sort of large brick wall that's right out in front now. It's just sort of a large plane of brick. You'll see glass along the back here. There's a little bit of an overhang because at one time the walkway came and then you entered the door directly here. We're talking about creating an entrance that's over on the side a little bit differently to allow folks that are parking in the parking lot not to have to walk around the front to come into the building, but rather come right into the building. In terms of the way the building is organized, the majority of this wing is really accessed by employees that will be coming to the facility, parking, and they can enter directly into the facility. The majority of the public that will be coming to this facility will be interacting with this part of the building, the council chambers, the assessor's office, the clerk's office, up on this part of the building. So we wanted to control the entrance over to this side. So we're sort of separating the everyday circulation from the general public that will be coming into the building, just by way of orientation. So one of the things that we looked at doing is sort of how do we create an entrance to the building that has sort of some monumentality to it and a little bit of civic pride. So we looked at this side of the building, sort of kind of a blank brick wall. There's some gas lines that connect into the building right now. There's a door and a small awning off this side. And we thought, one of the things that we might consider is putting, let's call it a public lobby on that side of the building that maybe became the gathering space. So if people were coming to go to a council meeting, as they're waiting, they can gather and they can wait in this lobby. We can also have security there. We can control access, who comes in and out of the building. And one of the things that we liked, and you'll see it in a future rendering, was this wall along the back side, maybe the opportunity to create a community wall, something that celebrates all of the everything about Lackawanna, whether it's the Basilica, whether it's the botanical gardens, whether it's the history and the steel industry, but maybe there's a way that it celebrates it along that wall in the form of a timeline or historical images or something. I'll show you in just a moment. And then we created two entrances to that and a little bit of a drop off that you'll see in just a moment. That's sort of that wall I was talking about along the front. And what we look to do is maybe we can change it a little bit. And so you can see the brick on the building in the background. And what we looked at doing with this wall is maybe recladding it with a, you have that Decton stone material? It's a pretty, we just use this at ECMC actually. It's tremendously durable. It's called Decton. It looks like a stone material, but it's a synthetic stone material. It's relatively inexpensive compared to stone, and essentially can be applied and attached over to the brick. It had sort of this monumental quality to it. It began to change it, and we thought it was a way to introduce Lackawanna City Hall. The seal that we'll be relocating is placed on that wall, and then maybe at night you'll get a sense of it in another rendering. We can do some sort of uplight. Oh, I'm sorry. Here.
Check it out. Thanks.
It's a pretty strong product. So as you continue to kind of look at the building, this steps back a little bit. So if you're standing on the sidewalk at South Park and looking back towards the building, you get a sense of that wall that we're talking about. You get a sense of the brick that's there now. One of the things that we looked at doing, the brick, the windows here are relatively narrow and they're kind of up high. One of the things that we looked at doing was cutting out, removing some of the brick a little bit, putting in windows that are a little bit more proportioned in terms of natural light into the space. Brings a little more daylight into that on both sides. The overhang that projects out, if you look at the overhang now, there's this kind of white aluminum metal that's on there, kind of steps back a little bit. We thought we could wrap that with a simple metal panel just to clean it up so that it matched in terms of color and texture with the brick a little bit more. The idea of the flags was something that we sort of thought about, this lawn space that goes between the sidewalk and the building. Is there a way to give this some sort of civic pride? And so we created this little, nothing more than sort of an indent that maybe has some brick pavers in there, maybe there's some benches, and that's where we can get the United States flag, the New York State flag, all of the flags of the area if we wanted to. The other thing that we thought about is this lawn, again, between the sidewalk on South Park and the building. Very often in communities, you need to find a place to memorialize something, whether that's the Vietnam Memorial, the 9/11 Memorial, World War II Memorial, whatever that happens to be. We thought that this lawn began to be that placeholder, that if you wanted to include a memorial in the future, there was somewhere you could put it. It's visible by everyone who drives up and down South Park and sees it, and it's sort of right on that prominent front lawn location. Again, these are just ideas. If you don't like them, you can say they're all bad ideas. We'll go back to the drawing board. This is sort of another view. This is if you were coming in to the parking lot from this area. Again, you can see the wall on the front. You can see the little overhang that was there now. There's a brick column. Again, we're just wrapping that with a metal panel that complements the color of the brick. This begins to show you a little bit of the addition that we're putting on the side. It comes out about 15, 17 feet, and just under 60 feet in terms of its length. So it's not tremendously large, but it gives us a nice little sense of a community living room and creating an entrance off that side. The other thing that we've tried to do, and this maybe sort of a little bit of an interesting idea, is to, again, this sort of feels like a railroad track, but not necessarily a railroad track. So we've done something with stamped concrete and materials just to sort of give that sort of history to the building a little bit and to the community. We've placed some bollards along here so you get a sense of where the entrance is. Parking, so someone can come around, pull up, drop someone off. We've addressed the handicapped accessibility in terms of a person coming right in. So you can get dropped off, you go right into the building, into the lobby, and then you can come right into the council chambers, assessor's office, all on one level. So completely handicapped accessible. This shows a little bit more of a close-up of that building, get a little sense of the background. So a little bit of stone on the bottom, the material that I had just passed around, again, really to protect it from the salt and the snow and sort of the damage that hits the bottom. Brought the glass up a little bit. Brought a fair amount of glass in there to bring some natural light into that space. You can see that sort of back wall in the distance. You'll get a sense of that in another rendering. Again, the entrance, we were trying to create something that maybe picked up a little history of the area, and essentially had some steel columns and a steel beam, a little canopy that comes off the top, and some lights so you know where the entrance is. You actually do get a little sense of the basilica over the top.
What kind of glass is that? Is it special thick glass?
Yeah.
For,
Thick glass, insulated glass,
Yeah, that's what
high
I mean.
performance. I mean,
Yeah.
you would be absolutely amazed at the quality of the glass today. We just went through at ECMC, we changed the entire curtain wall system
Right.
at the hospital there. I went to a high performing insulated glass. It's completely changed how people feel, how patients interact in the space, and it's sort of much brighter and it performs well. This is the addition that you begin to see off the back, and that's why we wanted to show this rendering a little bit. So you see the brick, the existing brick on the Knights of Columbus building. We're gonna want to clean it, go through a power washing process, repoint it a little bit. There's a couple of areas where it's a little damaged, so we're gonna have to kind of repoint it and touch it up a little bit. But we don't have to change it, and we don't have to cover it and replace it, so it certainly can help save us some money there. Along the backside, where the new addition is, we're largely thinking that will be done out of a metal panel material similar to what we're doing on the front entrance, where that little archway is. So you pick up a little bit of that as you look at the back of the building. This will take us inside the building. So if you can imagine, this is coming in the sort of, this is an entrance coming in the side over here. So as you look down sort of the length of the space, you see the other entrance that comes in. Again, we haven't really selected all the materials. It's really more of a conceptual idea. The flooring, we had tried to put what could be sort of an interesting light fixture in that space. And then again, this community wall that really shows history, shows timeline, captures a story of Lackawanna, and talks a little bit about the community. It can change. It can be a rotating exhibit, be a permanent exhibit, could be whatever it wants. But we thought it was a way to capture a little bit of that civic pride. And then the last one is sort of a shot at nighttime. So if you're sort of coming down South Park, you get a little bit of sense of the bollards. As you come into the site, you'll see the wall as it symbolizes Lackawanna City Hall, and then the primary entrance into the facility. So that's about a 5 or 7 minute walkthrough of the building and kind of where we are in the development of the design.
Yeah, I think it's a great concept, very impressive in my opinion. Mike, did you want to talk a little bit about the cosmetics around the entranceway of the class? The doorway itself?
Yeah, let me get one that's a little larger. This one?
Yes.
So that one's a little bit larger, and one of the things that we were trying to do, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things that we were trying to do, we added that stone material on the front wall, and we also put it on this entrance. So it kind of ties it together a little bit. We're trying to find ways to simply and inexpensively kind of tie the building together. And we also wanted to go back and maybe celebrate the history a little bit. And you can see, again, we've sort of included some of the steel columns that are there, the steel beam over the top. We have a glass canopy that comes out. We actually experimented this at one time. We actually had the stone come all the way up. We had the seal over the top of the door that said City Hall. So we've kind of had a few just different design studies on how that entrance might be. We kind of lowered it a little bit. We like the glass going over the top of it, bringing some natural light into it. And I think we thought what it did, when this was much bigger, it started to compete with this a little bit. And we didn't want to compete with the main wall, so we kind of just brought that down a little bit, so this sort of stood out on its own. But we thought just a few ways, the community wall, introducing some of the steel into the building, introducing the idea of the train tracks, or the concept of a track, right? It's not necessarily going to be steel tracks, it's not going to be wood beams across there, but maybe the idea of it. Again, they're just simple conceptual ideas. And this will give you a little sense of that lawn space that's on the front that goes across there that we would be able to celebrate with memorials, monuments, something if the need arose this time. It becomes a placeholder more than anything.
Any of the council members have any questions or any comments?
Oh, it was nice.
Mayor, first of all, welcome to our meeting, and it's good to see you here. Thank you for coming. Any comments?
I think they did a terrific job.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm excited. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
I think it lost the sort of Knights of Columbus feel to it a little bit, right? It's kind of gone. So a couple of simple moves have done that. I mean, at one time, quite honestly, we thought of cutting this off and removing it. But there's a cost for doing that, and we really couldn't, in our minds, justify why we would spend the money to do that. So rather, we just kind of wrapped it and said, we'll create some landscaping underneath it, or rain garden or something.
And Mike, your intent was to transform that building from a Knights of Columbus
To a City Hall.
City Hall concept, and I think you accomplished that based on what I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Also, Mr. President, I brought up the suggestion, there are some employees already that have hybrid cars. I'd like to see some jacks put into the new City Hall so that they can plug in.
Great idea.
And also, if we can, put some solar panels to help with the energy.
We should be able to get those from New York State for free, shouldn't we?
We'll try.
There are current grants, yes.
Yeah.
We gotta be quick about it, though.
Yeah, well, let's be quick. Well, we have something on the agenda today that we
Yes,
need
and that'll help us.
You have a large roof, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about solar panels, it's really not a crazy idea. I mean, you have a large roof. This is going to be built new, so you design it accordingly to support that. I think it's probably a good decision. I know you're considering geothermal as
Yeah,
well.
so that's actually a great segue. If I could add
Absolutely.
to that conversation, with the new building and all the new state code requirements related to energy and consumption and usage, one of the primary factors that we've considered and would like to convey to you guys is that geothermal is an exceptional opportunity for you guys to actually do energy and or heating and cooling to the facility, primarily the heating and cooling side of it. I did have a small video that I could play for you to explain what geothermal is, but I could summarize it first, and that's basically taking water and putting it down into the earth through tubes, bringing it back, and putting it back into the building. And then there's a heat transfer pump that basically either takes the cool out of the ground or puts the heat from the building back in the ground, or vice versa. So you can cool the building in the summertime, and you can heat the building in the wintertime. And what it does is it's highly efficient. There's a lot of grant money for it right now. There's a lot of matching funds for it, so it can reduce the upfront costs. And then it's very effective and efficient with very little maintenance long term. So from a big picture cost savings, it's very opportunistic. And for a building that's being designed and developed at the moment, it would comply with most of, if not all of the expectations for what should be the energy efficiencies of a new building.
And the governor's direction for electrification. And so I think when we consider something like that, it falls in line with.
Well, your firm was here at the council meeting, 2 months ago, making that presentation of anticipating those kinds of electrical requirements. That this may be a way around that in planning for the future. If there are reimbursable costs and incentives through the government, I heard 47% of what it might cost. That's substantial.
It
That's
is
something to consider.
It absolutely is. I do have a video if you'd like to see it. Unfortunately, it's just on the computer, but
How long is the
it's
video?
2 minutes. 2 minutes. All right.
Let her run.
I'll be quick.
All these doors here, are these just like emergency exits, they're just go out?
No
Fire.
access on the outside.
Yeah, I got you, that's it.
So apologize in advance for the condition here.
Heating and cooling your home account for more than half the energy in a typical home, making it the largest expense and largest greenhouse emitter. But did you know that even though the weather around us changes throughout the year, the ground underneath is able to stay at a constant temperature all year round? That's because the ground soaks up 44% of the sun's rays and stores it like a battery. What if we were able to put this ground battery to good use? That's exactly what a ground source heating and cooling system does. How does it work? An underground pipe system is installed to access the ground's constant temperatures. In the summertime, the earth is cooler than your home, so excess heat from the home is transferred to the ground. As the warmer water comes into contact with the ground, it naturally cools off, which then returns to your home to extract more heat from the house. In the wintertime, the earth is warmer than the outside air, so heat from the ground can be transferred to your home to heat it up. The closed-loop system is providing a continuous supply of warmer temperature to your home. By taking advantage of the sun's energy that's stored underground, ground source heating and cooling systems bring homeowners many benefits. They're quieter and more efficient to operate. In fact, for every unit of energy that these systems use, they can provide 3 to 4.5 times that in heating or cooling energy. They're emissions-free at your home, reducing your carbon footprint. They also require less maintenance and last longer because the system is protected from the weather. Lastly, they cost much less to operate. Ground source heat pumps can be installed in existing homes and buildings and new construction. There are several different types of ground source heat pump systems that you can choose from that best fit your needs.
So that's just a summary of exactly what is proposed, and as you can see, all the topics that we touched on are actually highlighted here. And this is NYSERDA, so this is exactly the group and organization we'd be working with for all those credits. And it's highly efficient and certainly effective for a building of your size.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone else have any comments? Tony, you look like you want to say something. Is it
No,
on this topic or something related?
If we're done with this topic, I just want to say that, everybody's in agreement with the way the inside of the building looks and the outside of the building looks. I just like to get the okay to keep going forward with the project, so we could get this thing built before everybody's out of office, you know?
Yeah, I'm in favor of it, but I can only speak for myself.
I have one question. Just looking forward, is this building substantial enough to, in the event a second floor was to ever be added onto, is that an option moving forward?
So here's how I would answer that. I think if you wanted to add a second floor, the easiest way to do it would be on the area where we're putting the new addition, because we can control the size and strength of the steel, right, and the foundations to support that future second floor. In the areas where the existing building is, it becomes more complicated, right, because now it's not just a matter of strengthening the steel, the footing underground has to be strengthened, so it becomes much more complicated. So if you were considering it, I would say do it on the area where the new addition is, then we can control it and be more cost effective.
Would that be a decision that we would have to make now? Or is it already,
Not today, but
no, I mean, is the building's default way of building it already preparing it for a second floor?
no, we haven't. But what we would do, just, and it's not a big decision, if you did say we want to go forward and plant, there's probably a premium you'll pay for the steel, right? Because you're designing bigger steel that could hold another floor, right? So it's a little bit bigger than it would need to be for the first floor.
But expanding outwards in the same fashion that the extension is always an option?
Always an option as well. You can always go one floor outward as well. You have a lot of land there too. You have a big area, right? You have a big parking area, so you have some. I think we'll start exploring the site a little bit more and some of the opportunities there, but that's also another option.
You're almost better off, I think, staying on the ground level, because now you're talking about handicap access and access to the second floor.
Yeah.
Complicates it. Mary, you wanted to make a comment.
Yes, Mr. President, in the city hall proper, we allowed for growth. There's 2 or 3 extra offices that are there for growth. We specifically added it in.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, it gets more complicated. Then we need stairwells, we need elevators, accessibility. Keep it on one floor, it's easy.
Well, we thank you and your organization for your efforts. It certainly is an impressive concept.
Thank you.
And I think we all need to move forward. I'm in agreement with that. I think the rest of the council is too, and I know the mayor is, so.
Great, thank you.
Get her done.
Get her done.
Tony, you have one more question?
I just have one more question I'd like Jason to answer. We've been having a lot of false information that's been given out on Center Street about the size of the street is being shrunk to port where it would be only a one-way street. There's a lot of bad information going out there, so I'm just gonna ask Jason if you could just touch on that real quick.
Yeah, so the short answer is that would not be the case. We are definitely keeping a two-way street. This is, the road itself is actually classified as a local road by definition. So that's, the New York State Department of Transportation classifies each roadway. You guys have many different roadways within your transportation system. This roadway classifies as a urban local road. So it's literally at the bottom of the criteria for traffic speed, traffic volume, and width. With that said, the current design section is 10 foot 6 inches for each lane in both directions. Okay, so one lane, both directions, 10 foot 6 each, so you have a total of 21 feet wide. Okay, and just to showcase how that compares to what the mandates from the New York State DOT would be, the minimum width for a residential area with severe right-of-way limitations is 9 feet per lane. You have 10 foot 6. The desirable width for the New York State DOT for this condition is 10 foot. You have 10 foot 6. So you're actually 6 inches wider per lane on both sides for this space, and your radiuses on each of the intersections has been improved as much as humanly possible. Some of them were pretty tight because of the poles or related utilities that were in place. We've done our best to mitigate that situation on any of the intersections that we could. And then for the ones that we could not, we did improve every single condition from an ADA perspective. So many of your intersections did not have any ADA compliance whatsoever. What we've done is we've improved each of those at, I think there's 18 side street intersections throughout the corridor. So every one of those will now meet the ADA compliance. You'll have 5 foot wide sidewalks. You'll have a 2-foot snow storage on the west side of the road, and the ADA compliance will be met at each of the radiuses on each of the corners. So considerably improved corridor.
Thank you, Jason.
I have a question on,
That
west
might-
side,
I don't know.
yeah, west side, talk to you.
Go ahead, Jack, ask, sure.
On the west side of the street, you're gonna have, like, how much grass area?
Approximately 2 feet,
2 feet?
plus or minus, yeah.
Okay, so now on the east side of the street, you're gonna have no grass area.
It's matching the existing conditions.
The sidewalk's going up against the curb, right?
That's correct.
And when a snowplow driver comes down the center of the street, goes outside the street, and plows the snow, they always ride the curb, right, Tony? And all the snow now is gonna be completely on the sidewalk.
Which it currently is. So
Well, we can do
unfortunately, there's only some areas throughout that corridor that have even a foot of width that's a snow storage area. Now, what is happening is that the sidewalk itself is actually getting wider in most cases, not everywhere, but in most cases, so that it's a standard 5 feet, which is ADA compliant. It's the preferred condition, even though 4 feet is the minimum. So you do have a wider sidewalk. You have a mountable curb, which means that the snowplow will be riding that as opposed to breaking it up. That was a condition that the DPW commissioner had requested. And that itself is an extra 2 inches wide as well. So while that doesn't seem like a lot, it actually turns in and translates to quite a bit. So it's 1.2 feet just about beyond what you currently have. And we don't have any other option. The right of way is so close in that space that if we go any further, we'll be in people's yards. We can't do that. So we've done everything we can to utilize the space that you have, that we can work within, and we've provided as much of that usable space as possible. Adding the snow storage to the west side is actually gonna help tremendously. So, and it'll now have a under drain on that side as well, which will drain that corridor snow storage.
And one more problem I see, where we have a construction company, we have trailers and everything else, they go in our backyard. That side of the street got moved out, and the street got 2 feet narrower, right? 2 feet narrower, trying to turn an 18-wheeler into a side.
It's
street.
mountable
Means
curb.
a lot.
Well, understood, but we still have an obligation to work within the confines of the right of way. So one of the things that was a problem and that currently exists is that the utility poles are literally up against the back of the existing curb line.
I saw that.
So right now, what we've done is we've brought those 2 feet further. So there's an 18-inch separation between the curb line and the utility poles. From a safety perspective, that's an important condition. So traveling public, general public, that's an improvement for everybody. And it also creates a space for that snow storage, at least on the west side. That's the best we could do from both sides.
There's no way of making an entrance way where street, not wider or something this way, and it turns.
A wider radius, and we've done that. Like I said, we did everything we could to make a wider radius.
You can only go so far, Jack, otherwise you're gonna start taking property away from the neighbors. So,
I mean, if you want to
Well, that
donate
would
your
be-
property, you can always look into that. That's
Yeah,
a
I mean,
conversation you can have
we don't want
with
to-
council.
You guys don't have much frontage of your house anyways, you don't wanna take any more away from that, especially on the intersections of that too. Maybe we
I'm
should,
talking about the side that is 2 feet wider. That side, going into the backyard, our backyard is where we park.
I think this project here, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, and other communities in Erie County have been talking about this project because of the way that
Yeah.
they've been working with other, utilities and, I mean, it's a model
Yeah, they're
for,
using it as kind of the model for betterments to a collective approach to what they call a road diet. That's the definition and the technical term for improving green spaces, reducing pavement widths, which ultimately reduces the cost to the community because we're not adding that extra 2 feet of pavement. That's a savings to the community. We're improving the sidewalk space, which is an improvement to the traversable space for pedestrians. We're also moving things away from the utility poles, which is a safety improvement. We obviously talked about the ADA stuff, but where this all kind of comes together is the fact that we were able to do this with the sewer authority, the water authority, and the city all coming together under one project and having them work in tandem to do all of the work cohesively. So that model is actually going in place now for Kirby Street, which is actually something that we're working on currently to try to get everybody back on the same page and seeing if they could all come together for funding. So they've all contributed funds equally to their needs for their infrastructure. So Water Authority did a complete water main replacement plus all the services. The sanitary sewer has had all new laterals, and they're gonna be lining the main. The storm sewer is new infrastructure through it, and then the road, obviously, and all the sidewalks and aprons. So all of the utilities and all of the infrastructure is being improved. And this is not something that we often see. Usually you get the road and maybe the sidewalks or the water main, and then you have a giant line down the middle of your road that's a problem in the future. This has been the model that they want to use throughout the county to try to facilitate future projects and master planning for communities like yours and others that are looking out 5 and 10 years when it comes to facilitating of funds, so that the water authority, the sewer authority, and the communities can all work together to get those plans in action.
Thank you, Jason. There was one other, we got to move on because we're into our time for our caucus. Sir, you had a question?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Is it possible to have those photos put on the city website so citizens can view them? Or someplace?
I would wait till you have the final design for that, the color and everything.
Yeah, why don't we wait till
Is it possible to see them now in case somebody's got some opinions, they can pass it on to their council?
Well, this isn't going to be an open forum for an open discussion for the entire community. When the renderings are complete, then they'll go on, and I'm sure we'll get comments then. Okay, Michelle, Josh, Mike, and Jason, thank you very much. Great job. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for your help, and we'll be moving forward.